Now, welcome to another lightning response video where I will once again take a question from the comments and do my best to answer it in a somewhat timely manner. Anyway, to get right to it, this time the question comes to us from Star Wars News and Memes, who asked, "Hey Thor, overall do you think that 2022 was a good, neutral, or bad year for Star Wars?" Okay, so first of all, everyone is going to have a bit of a different perspective or take on this one, right? As Qui-Gon said, your focus determines your reality, or maybe I should say you'll find the truth to back up your point of view or narrative while overlooking anything that doesn't back it up. And so if you're someone who just loves everything Star Wars, you're going to say 2022 was another banner year for the franchise and give a ton of reasons why. While if you're someone who thinks it's been dead for a while now, you're going to say it was a little more than another year of parading around a rotting carcass. As for my take, as someone who's been called both a toxic hater and a Disney shill, where the only narrative I cling to is wanting Star Wars to be good and saying as much when I feel it is, but also more than willing to call it out when it isn't, well, my gut reaction is to say that this was somewhere between a bad and neutral year for Star Wars, with one of the main reasons for that being not the content it put out there, though we will certainly discuss that, but rather what it didn't put out there. That being an announcement for the next film, or at least one that actually stuck and they seem 100% committed to, and that'll actually happen. I mean, for years now, we've had projects or writers and directors announced only for nothing to ever come of it, or anything truly concrete beyond their working on it, and it'll be out at some point in the future, maybe someday. And the one movie that did seem like, yeah, it was actually a real tangible thing in progress, that being Rogue Squadron from Patty Jenkins, well, now it seems as if it's, for better or worse, fallen apart and is never going to happen. And all of this leads to it feeling like Star Wars, at least on the movie front, is a rudderless, directionless, captainless ship that they have no idea how to get back on course, even though they've had years, 3 of them since the end of the sequels, to figure it all out. Which isn't to say I'm not okay with or even glad that they didn't just dive right back in after the sequels and start making movies with reckless abandon. I'm happy that apparently, or they seem to be, trying to come up with some type of actual plan or roadmap for the franchise. But it still feels like, again, with constantly just announcing writers and directors they've hired and not talking about actual projects in development before they hire these people, like Marvel does, it still feels like they're looking for someone to come in and figure this all out for them instead of internally having the know-how and leadership to get things done or put them in motion and to produce quality content. It's for this reason, though not this reason alone, that I am stunned Kathleen Kennedy is still president of Lucasfilm, that arguably the greatest film franchise in the history of film can't seem to figure out how to make movies anymore. And so, in my opinion, and keeping in mind that for many people out there, Star Wars is and always will be a film franchise first and foremost, that many just don't get into the Disney Plus stuff, but will go to the theater to watch it. Not to mention from the Disney perspective, the corporate perspective, films have the potential to make them a boatload of money all at once. Anyway, going another year without a film announcement is a huge, huge L for Lucasfilm and Star Wars, and pretty much is an inexcusable one at this point. There's no reason why it should take 3 years to figure out what direction to take your franchise in, unless, like I was saying, you're constantly hiring the wrong people for the job and have poor vision from your leadership. As for the content itself, and mainly focusing on live action stuff, since that's the bulk and pretty much the only thing we got, though yeah, we did get something like Tales of the Jedi, which I thought was pretty good and opened the door for more short-form stories in the future, though I don't think it really makes waves beyond the more hardcore fan base, the more inner crew who know and watch everything Star Wars. I don't think it's going to shape the future of the franchise on the large scale, if you will. Well, again, looking at the live-action content, I think it was mainly a neutral year all around. Though again, depending on your point of view or what you want to judge it on, you could easily say this was a positive or a very negative year. I mean, both Kenobi and Boba Fett, according to the numbers we have, which are not the official internal numbers from inside Disney+, but according to the numbers from external sources, both those shows did rather well. Not as well as The Mandalorian has been doing, but not bad by any stretch of the imagination. And so, if you're Disney and all you care about is numbers, especially those with dollar signs in front of them, you were probably pretty pleased with what those shows did, even though both, yet again, caused a split or divide in the fan base, even though Boba Fett, in my opinion, was just kind of there or was pretty average or okay at best. I mean, there were things I liked and enjoyed and other things that I didn't. Then there were things that didn't seem to fit at all or were just off. And then other things that seemed to get shoved in there that were actually kind of awesome, like the 2 episodes of The Mandalorian we randomly got. Those were both really, really good, but really, really out of place, even though, yes, they did loosely relate to what was going on in the show. But as I've said before, if Boba reaches out to Mando for help on Tatooine and he just shows up and kicks some ass and leaves again, no one's going to be upset that we didn't get a full-on explanation, much less get a whole episode or 2, that fills us in on what he's been up to or what's been happening with him and or Grogu. We know and expect that to be saved for Season 3 of The Mandalorian, and at most we'd get some kind of tease for what that would look like. Instead, again, we basically got some Mandalorian episodes, and that coupled with an okay Boba Fett story and some cool action here and there, if not always a fantastically written story, well, it led to something that maybe or definitely wasn't as good as it could have and probably should have been, but that wasn't terrible, and that I think some fans enjoyed and others just kind of shrugged their shoulders at and hoped for better next time. And that next time was, of course, the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, a show that I think was the last straw for some fans, maybe a lot of fans, it's hard to ever know, who had been less than pleased with what Star Wars had been doing here in the Disney era, but hoped they'd get this one right, but then arguably didn't. Which I do get because Kenobi, for me, the series, well, as I've said before, it almost broke me too. You can love it if you want. I don't really care if you do. I don't hate you if you do. Enjoyment is completely subjective. But for me, it just felt so low effort and generic and gave little regard to established canon. They took one of the most beloved characters, or multiple, I should say, when you consider it's not just Kenobi in there, it's Vader, Leia, not to mention a little bit of Luke as well. Anyway, they took one of, or some of, the most beloved characters. They had an opportunity to do something truly deep and profound, to give us this amazing introspective that was more substance than spectacle, to advance the limits of what we kind of expect out of Star Wars or what we normally get, and they turned it into a little more than just an excuse to have Kenobi and Darth Vader fight again. That was about it. That was my big takeaway from the series. They wanted to sell the rematch of the century. And so it turned out the show that was going to or did do something more introspective and profound with Star Wars that was certainly more substance than spectacle was the one that I think was easily the least anticipated of the bunch going into the year, that being Andor. In my opinion, again, you do not have to agree with me, but it was one of the best things Star Wars we have ever seen, even if it didn't feel like Star Wars to some people or it didn't have all the classic hallmarks some expect from the franchise. Problem is, the numbers weren't there for it, and as I was basically just saying, there were a lot of fans that just didn't enjoy it for one reason or another, which is fine, but also unfortunate, because I feel like this level of writing and production should be, shall we say, encouraged. It's not a good thing that low-effort Kenobi did better than big-effort Andor. I fear that might send the wrong message to Disney and Lucasfilm, that they're better off using name characters and half-assing it, than they are trying to make new characters and going all in on it. Either way, and in summary, I'd again say this year was somewhere between neutral and bad. It's bad that no new movie was announced. I think that's a really big deal. Again, a lot of fans don't get into the series. They want to see Star Wars on the big screen. It's also bad that you lost more fans with Kenobi and probably Boba Fett as well, though Boba Fett I don't think is as bad or as detrimental, shall we say, as Kenobi was. But then there was also something really, really good, that being Andor. It was a phenomenal show that hopefully, if they don't get the wrong message, could mean more quality content to come. Hopefully they take away from this year that, yes, you can make a lot of money using legacy characters, but you're going to lose your fan base. And if you put in the effort, you can actually create something truly fantastic. Again, Andor is a fantastic show. It might not feel like Star Wars, but could you imagine taking that level of, shall we say, quality and meshing it with legacy characters? Oh, what Lucasfilm could produce if they just somehow captured both. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me how you would rank or grade this year. Was it good, bad, or neutral, or somewhere in between one of those? Whatever the case may be, leave your comments below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.